everyone. Welcome back to the Convos with Anita Santiago podcast. Please like, subscribe, share, and review the podcast on all the major podcast platforms. Make sure that you tap in and catch up on all your past episodes. Also, if you have a topic or you would like to reach me directly, you can email me. Also, don't forget the website, Life Convo. Today is part 2 of my interview with the wonderful, amazing, incredible Miss Tanisha Taylor. So let's give her a round of applause. Welcome back, Tanisha.
Hello.
In our last episode, we just talked about the general principle of death and funerals. Trigger warning. If this is a trigger for you, we are still talking about death and funerals. This may or may not be a topic that you want your kiddos to listen in on. But I just want to put that out there first. If you missed that first episode with Tanisha, run it back quick right now in a hurry so you can be all caught up for our conversation today. But what we're going to talk about today is we're going to touch on some of these aspects of funeral death and that whole process that we may not be aware of. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because really, honestly, like in my family, we've lost so many people, and the people usually in charge of doing this stuff, they don't really talk to you about this stuff. You don't know what's going on. We are often ill prepared to deal with death on any level. We stay away from it. We don't talk about it. We shy away from it. So I want to bring some different perspectives so we can get an understanding. And then I want to encourage you all to do those things to make sure your affairs are in order. So Tanisha, thanks for coming back. And I really appreciate you just sharing all of your expertise and insight with the listeners, fans, and supporters. I really appreciate you.
And thank you for having me.
So today we're going to talk about things that you may not be aware of or you may not know. And I think like working with trauma and working with crime victims, there's a lot to the aspect of someone losing someone, especially when it's by violence, that you don't know unless you work in that capacity. What would you say? And so you guys got to go back to the first episode to hear her background and experience, if you want to know what that is. But just based on what you've seen, what is a big thing that we often don't realize about death and that trauma?
I would just say, of course, it's not anything that we are prepared for. So you'll always, get situations where, if you have like in my case with my grandmother, she was on hospice. We knew she was passing, but again, like we've always been told our whole life, we never know the day, time, or hour. So with my grandma's situation, we all were at one point, around her, she was fine. And then, we all left to go to the grocery store, went home, and it was just the hospice nurse and my little sister, there. And as soon as we all left, she passed, and it was just her and my sister, and the nurse. So we thought, we can go to the store, come back, we'll still have time. So I feel like we're not always prepared, even if we do know, someone's sick or whatever. But what we're dealing with now, and I hate it, it's a lot of the kids, how they're just passing suddenly, just like with the young man in Jennings yesterday. And rest in peace to him and condolences to his family.
Absolutely.
We're never prepared. Yeah, we're never prepared.
And I think when it's a life cut short, we can never reconcile that. Why did this life have to be cut short at this time? And I think that's what adds to the anger that comes out sometimes, is that everyone in the family is angry, and we're all angry, and that anger is coming out at each other because no one has the answer. And I think as American society, we have this perspective of rugged individualism, like we can overcome all these things, and we don't really take a more like tapered look that there are
Right.
some things that are absolutely out of our control, with death being one of them. And I know what you just said is so true. You can be with a person and leave the room and come back and it's over and what happened, and so I think just having conversations for understanding for everyone involved,
Okay.
because often, and I'll just use myself as an example, when my parents are sick, they don't want anybody to know. They don't want me to
Yeah.
know because they don't want me to worry, because
Right.
you've got so much on your plate and I don't want to worry you. So they don't tell you they're
Yeah.
scared, or can you sit with me and hold my hand, and
Yeah.
different things that I think we should be moved to do or moved to ask about, but we don't because we're scared, maybe.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
I just feel like, we've all been conditioned, like you said in the earlier podcast, to not talk about it, but we have to, just so that we're getting comfortable. This is just something that we have to talk about. We have to share, hey, I'm not feeling well, or, you may have someone who, is diagnosed with cancer, but they want to wait, to tell the family, then, they find out too late. It's like we just have to make this part of our, if not daily conversation, at least weekly or monthly conversations. Um,
people who don't reveal illnesses to their loved ones made me think
yeah,
about Chadwick Boseman. I was floored when he
yes,
died,
yes,
because for all of the thousands of us that went to go see Black Panther one, two, three, four, 8 times,
yes,
he didn't look sick. He didn't
yep,
act sick. And he purposely chose not to tell people.
yes,
And I don't know what the rationale was for that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we could have been so supportive in his fans. But I understand him wanting to navigate this journey in a way that was meaningful for him. And it would be hard to do if everybody's telling you what you should be thinking, feeling,
yes,
and expecting. And I know that when it comes to celebrities, we also look at them as invincible, especially when they're young. I
yeah,
mean, going all the way back to my age, when you had people die, celebrities died young, and we would talk about the unfairness
yeah.
of that. But did we ever talk about death being a part of life? I don't
And
know
they,
that we do a good job of that.
yeah, we definitely don't. And it, more than ever, it is a part, of our daily now.
Mm-hmm.
Just even with St. Louis alone, over the last couple of days, you're hearing about someone passing.
Right.
And so, like I said, I just feel like we should get more prepared, be more comfortable with it. I talk to my daughter about it all the time, and even you know when I was at the funeral home full time, she
Mm-hmm.
want to come with me, and sit up there with me, and she'll ask questions or whatever. So it's like I'm talking to her now about it,
Mm-hmm.
and in my case, like I'm my mom's only child. So
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I have my cousin and my aunts or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's just me handling everything. So even
Mm-hmm.
like with my friends and family, they, you don't want any more kids, what if something happens to you? It's just your daughter. She's very smart for her age. So I talk to her in a mature manner. So
Uh-huh.
she knows about death.
Let me
She
ask you this
understands it.
question. I keep interrupting you. I'm
Are
so
you fine?
sorry. But let me ask you this question. What do you say to people that say, I'm not going to introduce this topic to my child. My child cannot know. I don't allow my child to go to a funeral. I don't talk about death. Because this is a child and a child should stay in a child's place. What do you say to people that have that
Um,
perspective?
I say get away from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just like with anything else. You hide your kid from it, they're going to be exposed to it somehow, some way. And like I said, we never know the daytime or hour, so you never want yourself to be in that situation. You could pass out at home or pass at home and your kids, is there, so they don't know what to do. But if you
Right.
talk to them, hey, if you know this mommy or daddy, isn't moving or talking, this is who you need to
Mhm.
call. You want to get them prepared. And to be honest, a lot of these kids are smarter than we think.
Right.
So you definitely want to get them prepared because just like with you, they eventually have to go to a therapist, to deal with this
Mhm.
trauma, and even nowadays, like they have witnessed their parents' life be taken in front of them.
Mhm.
So now they're stuck feeling like, oh, what is this? What is happening? What is going on? So I say, even if you don't go into an in-depth conversation,
Mhm.
still have some type of conversation with them because, like I said, they're going to be exposed to it somehow, some way. And as a parent, you want to try and be there for your kid every step of the way, but we know that we can't. My daughter
I
goes to
was
her friends and cousins' house all the time, and I, let her know, hey, if this goes on, this is what you need to do. So,
I was gonna say that, I see as a from the mental health perspective side that this may be one of the reasons that some children, not all children, but some children have a hard time processing death because they're exposed to it in movies and rap. I mean, not rap. I'm not picking on rap. Please don't come for me.
yeah,
Music. Let's just say
yeah,
music. They hear about it, they see about it, but when they experience it, it's not so easy to navigate like
yeah,
the lyrics or the movie makes it seem. After a week or two, you still may be down. You still
yep,
may be sad. And from my theoretical perspective, my position is grief never ends. It's a
right,
soul changing experience. So often kids are lost because they don't understand what all of this is that they're feeling. No one has ever had a conversation with them. And when they lose someone close to them, like a friend, oh, because I mean, the rates of violence and suicide among
mhm,
young children is skyrocketing.
yes,
When children lose someone, or school shootings even,
yes,
they don't always know how to navigate that space. And if we're not talking about it in a mature adult way, we don't have to tell kids everything,
yep,
but we could better prepare them. If we can prepare them for college, we can prepare them for work, we
yes,
can prepare them for following our rules because we said so. Why
yep,
can't we prepare them for something that we know is going to touch their life?
yes,
What's the saying? There's only two things that start in life: death and taxes.
yep,
So I feel like I still hear that a lot in our community.
yeah,
I know that my personal experience, I don't think I went to a funeral until I was 12 years old. And nobody ever talked about death. It was just something, okay, we're going to a funeral. Okay, like what happened? Like,
yeah. What
they
am I
may not
doing?
even
What's going to
say,
go on?
yeah. And you have so many questions. And if you ask them, what do you hear? Well, child, your child, stay in a child's place, or
Yeah,
whatever, the plethora of old things that we
yes,
still use today.
yes,
But that's really an area where I think as a community, we can really change the perspective and the dynamic just in the way that we treat the topic. And that was one of the reasons I asked you to come on because you, I couldn't believe like you're just a regular person like me, and we just have these deep
yeah,
conversations. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, my listeners need to be in on this because you changed my mind about some things,
yeah,
and I was really glad about that because when I was talking to you, it wasn't scary. It didn't feel weird. You made me feel very comfortable. And I think that's probably why you're in the work that you're
yes.
in because you really have a way of just talking to people that puts them at ease.
Yeah. So I just feel like if we continue to talk about that, like it will help with our mental health. So if we can't prepare ourselves for a job, we can prepare ourselves, for school. Why not prepare ourselves to talk about the inevitable, which is death? So if you talk about it more when it does happen, you're able to navigate, through that experience, because you're not overwhelmed with all these feelings and thoughts, you know. So I just feel like we definitely should talk about it more so that it helps us mentally.
Right. And you know, when you were sharing in the first episode about how you got into this type of work, you didn't really say people suggested it to you. It was based on a personal experience. And I really feel like we're quick to say be a going to sports, football,
Yes,
basketball, baseball, computers, be a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer, but we never say serve your community or
right,
serve in a way that we know makes a difference.
right.
Because like we were saying in the other episode, this industry is growing. There are a lot of people in this industry that weren't in this industry before. And if we want things to flow a certain way, then maybe we need to get involved. I kind of feel like that with education. I feel like,
Yeah,
well, if we've got
yeah,
complaints about our schools and how teachers are teaching, then let's volunteer at the schools and make a
yeah,
difference. Well, this is the back end. You know, if we want to make sure that services are complete and work like they're supposed to, why don't we encourage?
yeah.
Do you have a do you have a thought about why typically we just don't encourage people to go into the mortuary service?
Yes. Well, I feel like now a lot of people are wanting to get into the industry because I run across a lot of people, who are just having regular conversations and they're like, oh, that's what I want to do. But like I said earlier, it's not something that you just go into like it's the post office or it's in
Okay.
any other job. Just like with the health field, you have to be. So I feel like the health industry and the health field and the death industry is something that, people should get into. But at the
Okay.
same time, it goes back to us not being comfortable. So, of course, your mom's not going to say, oh, well, go, apply for school so you can be a funeral director. Of course,
Mhm.
'cause we're not comfortable with that conversation. Nobody wants to talk about death, but this is just something that, we need to talk about and uh people, should get more involved, especially if you are like my aunt likes to say, one of those special kind of people. Um, you know, if there's something that you are curious about, get
Mhm.
into the program. Because even with the program, you have to go to a funeral home, you have to shadow, do
Oh.
like in that time frame, or even just in the class period, it'll let you know, like, hey, this is something I can do. This is something I can't do. Um,
So tell me about your program. Like what people who want to go into this field and work, what, like what's the training or what's the I
I was, you're fine. So, it's offered at St. Louis Community College at Forest Park. You do have to have a certain GPA, so you have to get accepted into the program.
okay.
Once you're accepted, you go through the classes, and with Missouri, you have to have a funeral director's license and an embalmer's license. So you
Okay.
want to get into the program, and then during that program, you do have to partner with a funeral home to do an internship. Just like with nurses, they have to
So
do clinicals and everything. Same with the funeral. You have to get to a funeral home and get in,
okay.
those hours with the funeral home.
So you said funeral director and embalmer's license. I didn't know that you had to be licensed for those things.
Yes.
And is that a requirement like just no states require?
Yes, so some states you can have either or, and then there's some states where they require you to have both. And so it's just like cosmetology or nursing. You have to go through the program. Just because you graduate and get the certificate doesn't mean you're licensed. You still have to take a state board exam.
That's about that's a so that's about a year worth of training, and then you do internship and you have to have a license. So when people and families are reaching out for various services, at least in Missouri anyway, we know these are people that have been trained and licensed to do this work,
Right.
and I think
Yeah.
that's pretty amazing. Um, do you have any advice for like pre-classes, like before you get into a program, what kind of classes would be helpful?
So they'll give you a list of classes. So you take classes before you actually get accepted into the program. And one of the classes that you do need to prepare for is accounting. So if math is not one of your strong suits, I definitely encourage to get a tutor for accounting because you will have to take one of those classes to get into the program. So you have to have a
And
certain
I guess
GPA.
that's from I guess that's from running the business aspect of it,
Yes.
I guess.
So you want, because if you're going to go into the funeral industry, you want to know everything about it. Because anybody can purchase a funeral home, but if you're
Oh,
not licensed, well, you have to have a licensed director, anyway. So you want to be licensed and you want to know everything about it because you want to know, where your money's going, what you're purchasing, stuff like that. 'Cause it's just like any other job or like your home, you have to pay bills.
mhm.
So, and then of course, like with the life insurance policies and stuff like that, you know, money ties into it. So you want to know about the ins and outs, especially about your money.
Right, especially about the money because you're paying people, you're buying equipment and services. So, and I
Yes,
guess, that's another thing that we may not really understand because in many professions where people serve, and I'm thinking of clergy and different things like that, we don't
yes,
necessarily understand that it's a business.
yes.
People are in business to make a profit. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I
No,
think it's something we need to acknowledge because, like, when we see hairstylists or our
exactly.
favorite nail person, they're an entrepreneur. We have people that own rental car places and
Yep.
stores and online shops, and we say, yes, yes, we want to buy from you so you can make a profit. And then somehow when we come to this area, it's like, well, we shouldn't make a profit, but yet we need this company to provide all these services.
Yep.
So I think that's just something we need to be aware of. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that a person is a funeral director, they have a service, and that they're in business to make a profit.
Services,
That
yes.
doesn't mean that doesn't necessarily mean they're greedy or mean or anything like that. It's just establishing that in our communities, we have all types of businesses and we shouldn't get angry because this particular business that's very, very needed, like you cannot not have.
It's just, you have to have it. And it's like anywhere you go. You go to McDonald's and you don't pay them when you go back. You won't be able to order, the Big Mac. You won't have Sprite to order because they're not able to purchase those things. Just, with the film industry, we have to purchase caskets. We have to, purchase the equipment to care for your loved one. It even goes all the way down to you have to purchase shampoo, to wash their hair. So
Now, see, that would be something I wouldn't even, until you just said that just now. I'm like, oh my gosh, like,
the funeral industry and I'll say cosmetology somewhat goes hand in hand because when you
wow,
go to these services and you see, your aunt, she's laid out, her hair is, nice. There's someone back there actually doing hair. There's someone back there painting nails. There's someone back there applying eyelashes, retwisting dreads, whatever the case may be. There's someone,
wow.
all the way down to as far as just cutting the grass. There's several different jobs in that industry.
Okay. And that's something like you're talking, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But because I'm not in a state of shock or grief, I can process what you're saying. And that
Yes.
was one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on to have these conversations because when we're emotionally distraught and we're grieving, that's not the time to have the conversation. The time to have the conversation is when we're calm and we're in a good space, and
Mhm.
we can process it and say, "Oh, that's something I didn't realize." And I guess there's somebody that the funeral home has to pay to provide all these services that you just listed, in addition to all the other stuff. And one thing I didn't know until my cousin passed away, I never knew that the land
Yep.
and I don't and I was shell shocked is not even the word when my aunt told me how much that she had to pay for the plot.
Yeah.
And I was like, so that was in addition to everything else. Like,
Mhm.
how did you,
Yeah. And even with
and
the
I,
cemetery, that can get expensive, but just like with the funeral, the actual funeral itself, that could be expensive. It all depends on how you want things to go.
mhm,
So if you're one of those people, if you know that your life insurance policy, isn't that much, and your family,
mhm,
isn't that financially stable, there's no need to purchase a big headstone and you want your, you know, uh plot to be at the front of the cemetery. It's gonna cost.
amen. And the
Same
headstone
with
is a separate cost
yep,
from
you have to
everything else. I did
you have
not
to
know that
pay
either.
your that even down to the wording, you're charged like per letter or something. Or even like with pictures and everything. So
Wow.
everything costs that's why they express the importance of life insurance policies, because it's like, you want an extravagant service, you have to come with
Mhm.
extravagant money. So
Now, you mentioned something in a previous episode about something called a pre-need,
yes,
that people can inquire about at funeral homes. So,
yes.
one, our first interview, to get those details, but do things like the cemetery plot and the headstone, are those included, or do you have to go to each person separately to do?
It depends because there's some funeral homes who actually own their own cemetery. So
Wow.
you can try and get that included. But if it's a situation where, you go to a funeral home and you go to a separate, cemetery, you have to go to that cemetery and let them know you want to pick out a plot and, purchase whatever it is that you need to purchase. You can purchase that at the cemetery.
And thank you. Another thing that I noticed that's really shifting in our community is the acceptance of cremation.
Yes.
And I know I be aging myself on the show, but that was almost, a sin to
Yes.
even mention the word cremation. And
Yes.
now I see so many more families embracing it because of the tremendous cost of
Yes.
funeral service.
Yes, so cremation is becoming more, the thing to do now, I'll say. Because again, like you said, it's not as expensive, but even with
Mhm.
that, people still want the full funeral service ceremony, but you can also be cremated afterwards. Because I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to be in the ground. I don't want, the bugs to get me." So, they say stuff like that. So that's where the option
Mhm.
of cremation comes into play. And even with that, they're expanding on that. There's a thing now called water cremation.
Yeah, I heard about that. What is
Yeah.
that?
So, from my understanding, you're put into like this tube, and it just uh, it's kind of you're being turned, and they're using water, and I think like some chemicals, to just dissolve the flesh. So it's still there's still a cremation. I would look more into it, but from what I understand, you're being put into this tube and it's water instead of fire. I guess to
And
the
I know,
family, it to the family mentally, it doesn't take a toll on them, I guess.
and I know there's been a lot of environmental concerns
Yeah.
around the heat and the chemicals that are
Yeah.
produced from cremation. And if we just think about COVID-19, like we're not talking about the baby boomers being the largest generation
Yes.
ever that are getting to that age, but the environmental toll, as more people accept cremation as an
Yeah.
option, now we have environmental concerns, and I think maybe that's where the water cremation was born. But
Yeah.
I heard the term, but I didn't know what it is. So this is another point to bring up that we may not think about, you know, when we're not in crisis mode, but you've got a plethora, and that means very many, a whole lot. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite words, sorry. But you have any different types of services that you can choose from. So
Yeah.
depending on what you and your family determine that, each one of you want. I have a family members that were very chronically ill, and they all had a meeting, and they
Mm-hmm.
wrote out, for me, I want this, for me, I want this. So when those times came, there was no confusion about who wanted what and what we were doing. But there are so many different services out there to choose from. This is a decision you can be a little bit proactive on if you care about the environment, you have concerns. We talked about the eco-friendly type of services where they
Yeah.
will, I don't know, put you in a tree, wrap you around a tree. I don't know exactly how it works, but you're connected to the tree and they put you in the ground, and
Yeah.
that's how they do that. Or like my dad said the same thing about the pound box. I'm like, you got to put it in writing because I can't make that decision when I'm
Yeah.
upset. But there are so many different ways to handle this, and if you can get your affairs in order and not put that burden on the shoulders of your loved ones, you help them out tremendously.
Yes.
Is there any other thing that stands out that typically, like the general public, we don't know about?
I would just say with the funeral homes, you can pretty much call them and just set up a meeting, with your funeral home of choice. Um, or even like a lot of people, they don't know about like out of town deaths. So if
Hmm.
you're out of state and you want to be brought, you just say, you go to Florida and something happens to you,
Okay.
you pass in Florida, you have to get embalmed there in Florida and then be shipped on the plane to,
Hmm.
Missouri. That cost. So now you're going into paying two different funeral homes
Hmm.
because you can't cross those state lines without being embalmed. And then you
Oh,
also
I
have
did
to
not
turn
know that.
to, it's just like if you're buying a plane ticket, just to go, the funeral home has to purchase a plane ticket for your remains to be shipped back to where
Hmm.
want to be. It's the same even if you have a funeral here in Missouri, but you want to be buried in Dallas, Texas.
Hmm.
All of
Hmm.
that comes to play. So there is a cost for everything. So um just have to keep that in mind when it comes to, services. Do I have enough money for the what ifs? Because you never
Okay.
know. You just never know. So you definitely have to be prepared for stuff like that.
Well, this has been so informative. I feel like our conversation is going to put some information out there. It's really going to be enlightening to people and help people.
Yes.
So, again, like we said at the end of the first episode, get a notebook, write down all your important stuff, write out what you want, write out how.
Yes.
You can contact funeral homes now. You can get information now. You can do a pre-need arrangement and pay for things now so you're not leaving a burden on your family. Check your life insurance. You may have gotten
Yes.
coverage when you was 18 on that job, but now you're married with 4 kids and you never looked at it again. Do you have enough coverage? Do your kids have enough coverage? Do your grandkids have coverage? And even if they don't have coverage, the pre-need option might be,
Yes,
maybe,
they're very good. Yeah, and even just with the life
yeah.
insurance, you have to dig deep into that because then you go
Hmm.
into different types of insurance. Term
Hmm.
life insurance, whole life insurance. So you have to look into that. And then a lot of people don't know that your kids can be riders. On your insurance. So that's another thing that we need to be informative on too. If you do have life insurance.
So listeners, supporters, and fans, let's get prepared. This is 2024. This is 2024. This is the year of doing stuff. We all in verb action here. So this is an area that you can take some proactive steps on to relieve the burden of your loved ones and have those conversations. Have the conversations about your philosophy on life so that people understand. Tell people you care about them. Say, I love you. Do all those things that you need to do. So when that time comes, people are not left wondering. People are not left confused and lost. We can do so much more to prepare our families and our friends for the circle of life because that's what it is. So I want to thank all the fan supporters and listeners for coming back all the time and checking out the new episodes. I want to thank my amazing guest speaker, Miss Tanisha Taylor, for being willing to come on and just talk to us, person to person about an area of life that's really important. Don't forget to like, subscribe, review, and share podcast episodes on all the major platforms. You can email me at convocws at gmail.com. And the website, lifeconvos.com. Thanks for
Thank you.